The story unfolds in a small African village nestled between dense forests and vast plains. This village, though steeped in ancient traditions, has begun to embrace modern ways, creating a place where old and new collide. People in the village are deeply intertwined with each other's lives, and nothing remains a secret for long. In this close-knit community lives Zori, a quiet and unassuming girl who seems to float beneath the surface of daily life. Her father, Jabari, is a respected but distant figure, too absorbed in his work to notice the growing tensions in the household. Zuri's life has been complicated ever since the arrival of her stepmother, Sephora, and stepsister, Amina. Sephora, a woman with a sharp tongue and even sharper intentions, has never shown any affection towards Zuri. She treats Zuri as an outsider, a burden, constantly comparing her to Amina, her own daughter. Amina, though outwardly polite, carries a quiet resentment towards Zuri, seeing her as a rival for their father's attention. The strained relationship between Zuri and her new family only deepens as time goes on, and Zuri's silent suffering begins to show. Despite her mild demeanor, Zuri has always carried an air of mystery about her. She is often seen wandering alone, her thoughts seemingly lost in another world, and the villagers gossip in hushed tones about her. No one truly knows much about her past or her true nature, which only fuels their suspicion. What they don't know is that Zuri has inherited something extraordinary from her late mother, a deep magical power that she struggles to control. Her mother, once a powerful witch in her own right, passed on her abilities to Zuri, but with them came a great burden of secrecy. Zuri hides this part of herself from everyone, knowing the dangers it could bring. She has seen the way her stepmother would use any advantage to manipulate her, and the way Amina's jealousy simmers beneath the surface. Zuri has learned to keep her powers hidden, not only to protect herself, but also to shield her family from the consequences of her abilities. Yet despite her best efforts to keep everything under wraps, the world around her is changing, and so is she. The conflict that brews quietly within her is set to erupt, and the revelation of her hidden power will change everything for Zuri, her family, and the village itself. Zuri's secret is one she guards fiercely, knowing the power she holds within herself is both a gift and a curse. From her mother, a renowned and feared witch in their village, Zuri inherited not just a strong, untamable will, but an array of mystical powers. She can control the elements, whispering to the wind, bending the trees to her will, and speaking with the animals that roam the forest. Her abilities extend beyond the physical world, allowing her to catch glimpses of the future in fleeting dreams. Yet, with each passing day, Zuri's powers become more uncontrollable. She feels them stirring inside her, restless and growing stronger, while she remains terrified of their potential consequences. If anyone were to find out, she knows that the price would be steep. Her stepmother Sephora would seize upon them for her own benefit, and Amina, ever bitter and jealous, would use them to destroy her. Zuri remains vigilant, using all her strength to suppress her abilities and keep them hidden from the world. But the pressure of living with such a secret takes its toll. Strange dreams begin to haunt her at night. Visions of shadowy figures lurking at the edge of the village, whispering about an impending calamity. She sees swirling storms of dust and fire, and she hears distant cries for help. The dreams are vivid and relentless, leaving her shaken when she wakes, sweat beading on her forehead. In the waking world, the unease lingers. There's a dark sense of foreboding that she can't shake, as though something dangerous is drawing near, but she can't quite put her finger on it. Her ability to glimpse the future, though powerful, also feels like a burden, because the visions are cryptic and never clear enough to act upon. They only leave her feeling more isolated, more disconnected from her family and the world around her. Amina, Zuri's stepsister, only makes things worse. Beneath her sweet, innocent exterior lies a deep-seated jealousy that festers every day. She sees the small gestures of kindness from Jabari towards Zuri, even though it's always masked under a thick layer of apathy. She sees how their father's attention, however fleeting, is sometimes drawn to Zuri, and this is enough to make Amina seethe with resentment. In her mind, Zuri's mere existence is an affront to her. To make matters worse, Sephora is often harsh with Amina, criticizing her for every little mistake, while showering Zuri with false praise and empty affection. Though it is clear to the villagers that Sephora's favoritism is far more a reflection of her cruelty than of any real care for Zuri, Amina sees it differently. She believes her father's love is a prize Zuri has unfairly won, a prize that Amina believes she should have. Because of this, Amina doesn't just ignore Zuri, she actively torments her. At school, in the fields, and even in the quiet moments at home, Amina mocks Zuri, making fun of her quiet demeanor and the strange way she carries herself. She whispers cruel things behind her back, telling their peers that Zuri is strange, perhaps even cursed. These rumors spread quickly, and before long, the entire village is buzzing with suspicion. Some say Zuri is a witch like her mother. Others whisper that she's cursed, and still others claim that her silence hides some dark secret. Amina feeds these rumors, pushing Zuri further into isolation. Zuri's life becomes a quiet struggle against both the unseen forces within her and the cruelty of her own stepsister. Meanwhile, Jabari, Zuri's father, remains oblivious to the growing tension. He is a man who works hard every day to provide for his family, but is often consumed by his responsibilities and too distracted by his work to notice the strife that brews within his own home. He sees what he wants to see, a happy family, at least on the surface. Zuri, despite her discomfort, continues to be the dutiful daughter, never daring to reveal the depth of her suffering. She keeps her thoughts to herself, letting her father believe that everything is normal. Even as the weight of her secret presses harder each day, she longs for him to see her, to truly notice her, but she's learned long ago that his attention is fleeting and his love conditional at best. In the silence of her own heart, Zuri becomes more and more aware of the growing unrest in the village. The whispers she hears in her dreams are beginning to leak into the waking world. Something is coming, and while she doesn't yet know what it is, the unease has seeped into her every thought, every breath. She's standing at the edge of a precipice, with a secret too powerful to keep hidden much longer. Yet, each day she continues to hold it close, her fear of the consequences growing ever stronger, knowing that when the time comes for the truth to be revealed, everything she knows will be turned upside down. One evening, as the sun began to set and the skies painted hues of deep orange and pink, Zuri found herself drawn outside by an irresistible pull. Her heart raced, and a strange energy surged within her. It had been weeks since she'd felt the urge to perform her secret ritual, but tonight, the feeling was overwhelming. She slipped quietly from the house, careful not to disturb her stepmother or stepsister. The forest behind their home always felt like a place where her powers could breathe freely. Here, hidden among the ancient trees, Zuri could tap into the magic that pulsed through her veins. In the quiet solitude of the woods, Zuri gathered her thoughts and prepared for the ritual she had perfected over the years. Her mother had taught her the sacred practices in secret, ways to connect with the earth, channel the wind, and unlock the dormant powers within her. Zuri had never fully understood the extent of her abilities, but her mother's teachings had always felt like the most natural thing in the world. Tonight, she needed strength. Her visions had become more vivid, more urgent, and the weight of the danger that loomed over her village had become unbearable. She needed to channel the energy that had been building inside her to keep the darkness at bay. With a deep breath, Zuri knelt on the ground and closed her eyes. She began the chant her mother had taught her, her voice soft at first, then growing with power as the words filled the air. As she spoke, her fingers brushed the soil beneath her, and she felt the familiar connection between herself and the earth. The wind picked up, swirling around her, and the trees seemed to bend closer, as if listening to her call. In that moment, Zuri felt more alive than ever, her magic swirling around her like a storm. But then, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath her seemed to pulse with energy, and a soft rustling filled the air. Zuri opened her eyes just in time to see something unbelievable. A large tree near the edge of the forest began to grow. It stretched upwards, its gnarled branches reaching for the sky, while vibrant flowers bloomed from its bark, flowers that had not been seen in years. The petals glowed softly in the fading light, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding trees. Zuri's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't meant to manifest such a display of power. It had been an accident, a slip of control. But the tree stood there now, impossibly alive and blooming in a way that defied nature. As Zuri gazed in awe, her stomach twisted with dread. She had never allowed her magic to reveal itself in such an overt way before. The village would notice, and Sephora, with her sharp eyes and quick temper, would surely see it as an act of rebellion. A deep sense of panic settled in her chest. What if someone saw her? What if the villagers learned of her powers? Her heart pounded in her chest as she quickly stood, hoping to return to the house before anyone could witness the spectacle. But it was too late. Sephora, already suspicious of Zuri's strange behavior, had been watching from the window of their home. The sight of the tree, its branches now towering above the surrounding forest, had caught her attention. Her eyes narrowed, a deep frown creasing her forehead. She had always known there was something unusual about Zuri, something that didn't quite fit. And now, this impossible display of power, confirmed her suspicions. Sephora stormed outside, her footsteps heavy with purpose. "Zuri!" she called sharply, her voice laced with anger. "What have you done?" Zuri turned to face her stepmother, her mind racing. I didn't mean for it to happen, I was just—" "Enough!" Sephora snapped, her eyes wild with fury. "You're practicing witchcraft, aren't you? This is magic, isn't it? You're trying to curse us, aren't you?" Zuri's mouth went dry. She had feared this moment for so long, and now it had come. She remained silent, her eyes cast downward. She couldn't bring herself to deny it, but neither could she explain what had happened. The words felt stuck in her throat, as if the very act of confessing would bring destruction to everything she held dear. Sephora's fury only intensified. "You think you can hide from me? I'll make sure everyone in this village knows what you've done. You've brought nothing but trouble into this house, and now you're trying to destroy us all with your wickedness." She pointed a trembling finger at the tree. "I knew something was wrong with you from the moment you arrived here, and now I see I was right." Before Zuri could respond, Amina, her stepsister, appeared from behind the house. She had been eavesdropping from the window, and her eyes widened in both fear and fascination as she took in the sight of the glowing flowers and the towering tree. Her curiosity was piqued, but her jealousy burned even hotter. "What is this?" Amina demanded, her voice trembling. "What's going on here, Zuri? What have you been hiding from us?" Zuri turned to face her stepsister, her heart sinking. Amina had always been cruel to her, but now it seemed her suspicions had turned into something more dangerous, an insatiable need to expose Zuri for what she truly was. Zuri could see the wheels turning in Amina's mind, her curiosity growing stronger with every passing second. Amina stepped closer to the tree, her fingers brushing the petals, her expression a mix of wonder and suspicion. "I knew something was off about you," she muttered under her breath. "You've been hiding something, haven't you?" Zuri stepped forward, desperation in her voice. "Please, Amina, don't tell anyone. You don't understand. I didn't mean for this to happen." But Amina just stared at her, the wheels turning in her mind. "We'll see about that," she said cryptically before turning to her mother. "We should tell the village what's going on. People should know about this witchcraft." The tension in the air was thick, and Zuri knew she was cornered. Her stepmother's accusations were getting louder, and Amina was now an unwitting accomplice in exposing her secret. As the family argued, the village began to stir, whispers of witchcraft and magic filling the air. Zuri, however, kept her lips sealed, choosing to remain silent even as the accusations flew. She couldn't afford to reveal the full truth, not yet. But the walls were closing in, and it was only a matter of time before her secret would be exposed to the whole village. Zuri's heart felt like it was being torn apart from the inside. She spent her days haunted by the events of that evening. The tree, the glowing flowers, her stepmother's accusations. Every night, her dreams grew darker, filled with images of the village in flames, her father pleading for help, and Amina's cold, calculating eyes fixed on her. She had tried so hard to hide who she was, to suppress the power that surged within her. But now, with her secret out in the open, it felt like there was no escape. Her father, Jabari, remained blissfully unaware of the true extent of the turmoil in their home. He had heard the raised voices and seen the strange events unfolding around them, but he couldn't bring himself to understand the source of the fear that gripped their house. His blindness to what was happening left Zuri feeling abandoned, as though her struggles were invisible to him. He was a good man, one who loved her in his own way, but Zuri felt more alone than ever. How could she tell him about the magic that coursed through her veins, knowing he would only see it as a threat? How could she expect him to protect her from Sephora's wrath or Amina's jealousy when he didn't even see the real danger? The burden of her secret weighed heavily on Zuri, and the pressure of it all left her feeling small and powerless. Every time she looked at her stepmother, Sephora's eyes burned with suspicion, and every time she saw Amina's cold smirk, she was reminded of the cruelty that simmered beneath her stepsister's sweet exterior. The village was starting to talk, and soon the whispers would grow louder, spreading far beyond the walls of their home. Zuri knew she couldn't hide much longer, but the fear of what would happen if she revealed everything, if she unleashed her full power, paralyzed her. She didn't know what the consequences would be, but she feared the very thought of losing control. In her desperation, Zuri sought guidance from Binta, an elder in the village who was known for her wisdom and knowledge of the mystical arts. Binta had always been a mysterious figure, living on the outskirts of the village, with her long silver braids and weathered hands that held secrets of old. Zuri had heard stories of Binta's own powers, of how she had been a healer and a protector in her younger days, and how she had known Zuri's mother. Zuri had always been drawn to the elder, though she had never sought her counsel until now. But, in the midst of her turmoil, she needed answers, needed someone to help her make sense of everything. Binta welcomed Zuri into her small, humble home, filled with the scent of herbs and the flicker of a single candle. The elder studied Zuri with knowing eyes, as though she could see straight through her, understanding her fears without a word being spoken. Zuri's throat tightened, and she struggled to find the right words. "I don't know what to do," Zuri confessed. "I can't hide this anymore. My magic, it's becoming uncontrollable. If Sephora or Amina ever find out what I'm truly capable of, they'll use it for their own gain. And I can't risk hurting anyone." Binta nodded slowly, her gaze soft but firm. "Your powers, child, are not just a gift. They are a responsibility. They have been passed down through your family for generations, and with them comes great power. But power, when misused, can be dangerous, even to those who wield it. You are not like the others in your family, Zuri. You are the keeper of this magic, the one who must decide how it will be used. But I'm scared," Zuri admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I lose control? What if I hurt someone? What if Sephora finds out, or worse, what if Amina exposes me to the village?" Binta placed a reassuring hand on Zuri's. "The magic within you is wild, yes, But it is also part of who you are. It can be tamed, Zuri, but only if you learn to trust yourself. You must face your fear, and you must do so soon. If Sephora and Amina discover the full extent of your powers, they will not hesitate to use them to their advantage. They will exploit your gift to manipulate and control, and it will be too late to stop them. You must decide now whether you will be a prisoner to your fear or a protector of the village you love. Zuri's heart pounded in her chest as Binta's words sank in. The weight of her responsibility had never felt heavier. But the elder's words also awakened something deep within her, a fierce resolve that had been buried beneath layers of fear and doubt. Zuri realized that she couldn't continue to hide forever. The magic was part of her, and she could no longer allow the fear of it to rule her life. If she wanted to protect her father, the village, and the ones she loved, she had to face the truth. She had to embrace her powers. "But what if I fail?" Zuri asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You won't," Binta replied, her voice filled with conviction. "You are stronger than you know, Zuri. Trust yourself. The magic is a part of you, not something to fear, but something to nurture. It is time for you to stand tall, to embrace who you are, and to use your gifts to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Zuri sat in silence, the weight of Binta's words settling deep in her heart. She felt the fear and uncertainty begin to dissipate, replaced by a quiet determination. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that the time had come to stop hiding. Her secret was no longer something to protect, it was something to wield, something to fight with. And as the first rays of dawn peeked through the trees, Zuri made a vow to herself. She would no longer be a prisoner to her own fear. It was time to confront the truth, no matter the cost. The days following her visit to Binta were filled with a constant undercurrent of unease. Zuri knew what she had to do. She had to embrace her powers, face her fears, and protect her village. But there was a growing tension in the house that she could feel in the pit of her stomach. Sephora's suspicions were only getting worse, and Amina's jealousy had reached new heights. Zuri couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Zuri slipped quietly from the house once again. Her heart thudded with nervous excitement as she made her way to the forest, a place where she could practice her magic without fear of being caught. The wind had been calling to her all day, its whispers growing louder, urging her to come. She needed to strengthen her connection to it, to feel its pulse and learn to control it fully. Unbeknownst to Zuri, however, she wasn't as alone as she thought. Amina, lurking behind the house, had noticed her leaving and had decided to follow. She had been watching Zuri more closely in recent days, intrigued by her behavior, and especially by the strange events that seemed to follow her. The jealousy that had always simmered beneath the surface was boiling over, and the seed of suspicion had blossomed into something far more dangerous. Amina was no longer content with simply tormenting her stepsister. She wanted to expose her. She had no idea what Zuri's secret was, but she knew it was something powerful, something that could make her the center of attention in the village. As Zuri made her way deeper into the forest, she felt the familiar stirrings of magic within her. The air grew thick with energy, and the trees seemed to bend closer as if waiting for her to speak. She closed her eyes, summoning the wind, letting it swirl around her body in a gentle, caressing motion. She felt the wind become part of her, an extension of herself, and she whispered words that only the breeze could understand. The trees rustled in response, and the birds perched high above in the branches seemed to listen to her, their eyes gleaming with a knowing light. She spoke to them, asking them to reveal the secrets of the forest, information that would help her protect her family, her village, and herself. As Zuri focused on her magic, she was unaware of Amina's quiet approach. Hidden behind the thick trunks of trees, Amina watched, her eyes wide with astonishment as Zuri's powers came to life. The wind seemed to obey Zuri's every command, swirling around her like a living thing. The animals responded to her call, coming closer, their presence comforting and unnerving all at once. Amina stood frozen, her jealousy momentarily eclipsed by the awe she felt at the spectacle before her. She had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just some trick. Zuri was doing things that no one else could. Zuri, lost in her connection with the earth, didn't hear Amina creeping closer, nor did she sense the malice that had begun to twist in her stepsister's mind. But when the wind suddenly shifted, Zuri's eyes snapped open. She saw Amina standing in the distance, her face a mask of shock and curiosity. Zuri's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected anyone to discover her secret, and now here was Amina, standing there with a look that Zuri couldn't quite place. "Amina," Zuri called, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you doing here?" Amina stepped forward slowly, a smile curling at the corner of her lips. There was no fear in her eyes, only a cold, calculating glint. "I've been watching you, Zuri," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "I never knew what you were hiding, but now I see. You've got magic. And not just any magic, but a power I've never seen before. You're special, aren't you?" Zuri's heart sank. She knew what was coming next. "Please, Amina," she pleaded, "don't tell anyone. You don't understand what this means." But Amina wasn't listening. Her eyes shone with newfound ambition. "Oh, I understand perfectly. I've always been second best to Sephora, haven't I? She's always treated me like I don't matter, like I'm not enough. But now I know what you are, and I know what you can do. I can use this, Zuri. I can finally make things right." Zuri's stomach twisted. She knew exactly what Amina was suggesting. "You want me to use my powers against Sephora," she said softly, her voice laced with a mix of fear and disbelief. Amina's smile widened. "Exactly. You're so much more powerful than she knows, Zuri. You could help me. Help me get what I deserve. All I have to do is tell her what I saw tonight, and you'll be finished. She'll cast you out, she'll tell the village, and everything you've worked so hard to hide will be gone. But if you help me, I'll keep your secret. I'll never say a word to anyone." Zuri felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Amina had always been cruel, but this was different. This wasn't just teasing or jealousy, it was blackmail. Zuri was trapped, and the weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest. She had to protect her family, and she had to protect her secret. But could she really go along with Amina's plan? Could she manipulate her stepmother, use her powers for revenge? The stakes were rising, and Zuri found herself caught between two impossible choices. If she refused, Amina would expose her powers, and everything would be lost. But if she agreed, she would betray her own values, becoming the very thing she feared, someone who used magic for selfish purposes. After a long pause, Zuri spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Fine, I'll help you, but this is the last time. After this, you have to leave me in peace. No more games, Amina." Amina's grin widened, and for the first time, Zuri saw the darkness in her stepsister's eyes, an emptiness that would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. "Deal," Amina said, her voice filled with a quiet triumph. But as the words left her mouth, Zuri knew that this was only the beginning. The path ahead was no longer one of simple secrets and hidden powers. It was a road of danger, manipulation, and betrayal. And as much as Zuri hated to admit it, she was already in too deep to turn back. The day of the village's annual ceremony had arrived, a day of celebration and reverence when the elder women blessed the crops for the coming season. The air was thick with anticipation as the villagers gathered in the center, their voices rising in song as the ceremony unfolded. The scent of fresh herbs filled the air, mingling with the sounds of children laughing and women preparing offerings. But beneath the festivities, there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense of something dark waiting to unfold. Zuri stood quietly among the crowd, her mind swirling with thoughts of the agreement she had made with Amina. She had hoped that everything would remain hidden, that Amina would keep her secret, as she had promised. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. Her powers were no longer something she could keep buried. The fear she had lived with for so long now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a newfound sense of determination. But she never expected the revelation to come today. As the ceremony continued, Zuri's heart sank when she saw Amina slip away from the crowd. Her stepsister's eyes gleamed with a dangerous determination as she made her way toward the center of the village square. Zuri's breath caught in her throat. She knew exactly what was about to happen. Amina stepped into the middle of the gathering, her voice cutting through the peaceful atmosphere like a blade. "Everyone," she called, her voice ringing out with a mix of triumph and spite. "I have something to show you. Something you've all been kept in the dark about." The villagers turned toward Amina, curious whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Zuri's heart pounded as she realized the full extent of what her stepsister was about to do. Amina pointed directly at Zuri, who stood frozen in shock. "This is no ordinary girl," she declared. "She's been hiding something from all of you. Magic ! Witchcraft." Amina's voice rose with each word, her eyes filled with the twisted satisfaction of finally exposing her stepsister. "She's been using magic to control the wind, the animals, the earth itself, all while pretending to be just another humble village girl." The crowd gasped, the murmurs of disbelief rippling through the gathering. Zuri's mind raced, her body frozen with fear and shame. She could feel Sephora's eyes on her, a mixture of rage and jealousy burning in her stepmother's gaze. Before Zuri could react, Sephora stepped forward, her voice cold and venomous. "Witchcraft!" she spat. "I should have known all along. You've been deceiving us, using dark magic for your own gain." Her words stung like a lash, and Zuri felt the weight of the accusation pressing down on her. The village elders looked on, their expressions unreadable, while the rest of the villagers remained silent, unsure of what to believe. But Zuri could no longer remain silent. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now replaced by a surge of power, an unshakable strength that she had long ignored. She stepped forward, her eyes locking with Sephora's. The time for hiding was over. With a deep breath, Zuri called upon the elements, the wind, the earth, and the spirits of her ancestors who had long protected the village. The wind howled in response, swirling around her like a living entity. The ground trembled beneath her feet as the earth itself seemed to respond to her command. The air grew thick with energy as Zuri's voice rang out, powerful and unwavering. "I have hidden my magic for too long," she declared, her voice echoing across the square. "But no more. This power is not a curse, it is a gift from my mother, a gift from the spirits who have walked before me. I am not the monster you say I am, Sephora. I am the protector of this land, and I will no longer stand by while you tear it apart." The wind picked up, bending the trees and sending dust swirling through the air. The animals, once distant, now gathered around her, their eyes glowing with recognition. The villagers watched in stunned silence as Zuri's power filled the square, commanding their attention. Sephora took a step back, her face pale with shock and fear. Amina, too, stepped back, realizing that she had underestimated the depth of Zuri's abilities. Zuri's gaze never wavered from them. She had spent so long hiding, so long being afraid. But now, there was no going back. She would face them, her stepmother, her stepsister, and the villagers who had doubted her, with the full force of her power. In that moment, Zuri felt the connection between herself and the land around her. She felt the weight of her ancestors' wisdom, their strength, and their protection. The spirits whispered to her, urging her to stand tall, to show them what she was truly capable of. With a final, powerful gesture, Zuri raised her arms to the sky, calling upon the spirits of the earth. The ground cracked beneath her feet, sending a pulse of energy through the square, and the wind howled louder, pushing against the walls of the village. The trees swayed, and the animals, in perfect harmony, seemed to acknowledge her power. The villagers were now silent, their eyes wide with awe and fear. Even Sephora and Amina were frozen, caught in the overwhelming presence of Zuri's magic. The tension that had built over the past days, the months of secrecy and fear, had reached its peak, and in this single moment, Zuri had claimed her power, her birthright. "I will not be your pawn," Zuri said, her voice steady and filled with authority. "You cannot use me. I will not be silenced. If you want to destroy me, you will have to go through this land and the spirits that protect it. And that, I promise, will never happen." Sephora, still trembling with rage, took a step forward, but Zuri's gaze stopped her cold. The power in Zuri's eyes, the raw force of her magic, was too much for her to handle. With a glance toward Amina, Sephora turned away, realizing that the battle for control was over. Zuri stood tall, her magic still swirling around her like a protective shield. She had finally embraced who she was, not just a girl hiding a secret, but a force to be reckoned with. The villagers, seeing the truth in her power, slowly began to nod, a sense of respect growing in their eyes. Zuri had won, not through violence, but through the sheer strength of her spirit and the love for the land that had raised her. And with that, the final showdown was over. Zuri had revealed her secret, but more importantly, she had revealed the truth of who she truly was, a protector, a daughter of the earth, and a force that could never be underestimated. The aftermath of the confrontation left the village in a quiet state of shock. The once bustling square was now eerily silent, the villagers still processing the astonishing display of Zuri's powers. Some looked on in awe, unable to believe the truth of what they had just witnessed. The wind still howled through the trees, and the ground trembled with the echo of Zuri's command. Others, however, took a step back, fear clouding their eyes as they whispered amongst themselves. Magic, especially the kind Zuri had revealed, was something unknown, something that made the village uneasy. But Zuri's honesty, the raw truth of her actions, began to change their minds. Over time, the fear that initially gripped the villagers transformed into a grudging respect. They saw that Zuri wasn't a threat. She was a protector, a force that could help safeguard their village from dangers they couldn't even imagine. The elders, who had initially looked upon her with suspicion, began to recognize the value of her gift. Sephora, once consumed with jealousy and anger, found herself standing alone, the realization of her mistakes dawning on her. She had tried to control Zuri, to crush her spirit, thinking that would bring her power and control. But in trying to subdue Zuri's magic, she had only brought chaos and suffering. Sephora's harshness had pushed her daughter away, had driven Zuri to hide her true self for so long. Now she saw the consequences of her cruelty. With a heavy heart, Sephora approached Zuri one evening, when the air was calm and the sky bathed in the golden light of sunset. Her voice was softer than usual, her eyes filled with regret. "Zuri, I see now that I was wrong. Your powers, they're not something to be feared. I was wrong to try and control you. Please forgive me." Zuri, though still cautious, nodded slowly. "It's not just about forgiveness, Sephora. We both have to learn to change. I've learned to embrace my powers, but we have to work together if we want peace." Amina, who had remained distant during the aftermath, eventually came to Zuri with her own quiet apology. I thought I could use you, Zuri," she said, her voice tinged with guilt. "But I see now that your magic was never meant for me or anyone else. I'm sorry." Zuri's heart softened at her stepsister's words. "It's not too late for us, Amina. We all have a part to play in the future. We just have to choose the right path." In the months that followed, Zuri became a respected figure in the village. She embraced her abilities, not for selfish gain, but to help those in need. She healed sick animals with the magic of the earth, called upon the wind to bring rain during dry seasons, and communicated with the forest to protect the crops. Her powers, once hidden in fear, had now become a source of hope and strength for her community. As for Sephora and Amina, they learned to work alongside Zuri. Sephora, once a woman driven by control and bitterness, became more understanding and compassionate. Amina, who had harbored resentment, began to see her stepsister as a true ally, someone who could help them all. The story ended on a hopeful note. Zuri, now free of her secrets, embraced her destiny. No longer afraid, she stood as a beacon of possibility for the future. The village had learned to accept her powers, not as a curse, but as a gift, one that would help shape their future for the better. The winds that had once whispered warnings now carried songs of renewal, and Zuri the Protector had finally found her place in the world.